Now streaming on Disney Plus is Pinocchio, which is a live-action CGI reimagination of the 1940s Disney classic Pinocchio. This film stars Tom Hanks as Geppetto, and it's been getting bashed everywhere by critics. And I am here to say, I disagree. I don't think this film is that bad. To hear more of my thoughts, check out this video, and thank you for watching this review. Welcome to the Beniverse. All right, howdy everybody. My name is Ben Friedman here from the Beniverse. I apologize if I'm a little quiet today. I have people around me in the house sleeping, so I'm trying to keep my voice down a little bit. And this is not going to be a particularly long review, I should say. I am talking about the 2022 reimagining of the film Pinocchio. And I called it a reimagining. That's probably a horrible way to phrase this because it's basically the 1940s Disney classic. Just in CGI live action form. This has been a trend that Disney has been doing a while since the start with Cinderella, I believe, was one of the earliest ones. No, Alice in Wonderland was definitely one of the earliest ones. Cinderella, most recently, The Jungle Book, and The Lion King. And we also had Aladdin and Lady and the Tramp recently as well. So this has been a trend that they've been doing. It has proven huge financial successes for the studio. Beauty and the Beast made over $1 billion. The Lion King from 2019 made over 1.5 billion, and so did Aladdin, which also made over $1 billion. These films are cash cows for Disney, and it's no surprise that they're going to their much beloved lexicon of films and scrapping everything that they can from it for every dime. Nothing is precious anymore, and if we can accept that, we can have a cohesive talk about this movie. And I have heard so much negativity towards this movie, and I'm not going to come out and say this movie is good. I think this movie is fine. That is my overall review of Pinocchio. Pinocchio is a fine movie that kept me engaged throughout the film, though there are certain sections that lost me. I think the biggest strength that this movie has is its star performance in Tom Hanks. Tom Hanks is such a good actor, and he fully commits to the role of Geppetto. They changed the backstory with him and Pinocchio a little bit to make it more emotional, and I think that was well done to suit Tom Hanks' strength because he's just such a charismatic figure and he's such a good dad type caricature actor that it just works, and you're able to get more of that passion that Tom Hanks is able to bring to a role. So it allows Tom Hanks to just be giving a really good performance in a movie that is undeserving of that good of a performance. I think he brings a lot of heart and emotion, and when the story solely focuses on Geppetto and Pinocchio, I think the movie actually works to a pretty good degree. The issue is that the story, as everyone who knows who has seen the Pinocchio from the 40s, the story does not focus on these two. They are very much together for the first act of the film, and then Pinocchio goes off and he has his own adventure. That's when the film falls apart because the CGI in this film is at times very questionable. I didn't have a problem with the design of Pinocchio as much as other people did. I thought it was cute and a good enough translation of what that character looked like from the original cartoon. I didn't find it particularly appalling. I think they've done much worse CGI in Disney movies before of the live actions. I thought this was a pretty straightforward adaptation of what Pinocchio would look like live action. My issue with the CGI is everything CGI. When you have Pinocchio, who is supposed to be a real boy, he doesn't have strings on him anymore, then you have other puppets around him that are supposed to be real puppets, being controlled by marionettes, but they're also just CGI. It kind of makes it really hard to differentiate between Pinocchio and the supposedly fake puppets. And that is a challenge throughout this film because everything just feels so CGI. So the specialness of this, puppet becoming a boy doesn't feel as, it doesn't have any form of weight to it, just in complete honesty. It doesn't. And that's where the film falls apart. There's these certain set pieces that the film has to hit, whether it's Pleasure Island, whether it's the marionette show, whether it's the whale in the third act. There are certain beats that the classic film hits that that this film is going to hit, and they hit it. And it's the issue is when they go away from the emotion of this story, the film becomes spectacle, and it becomes pretty bland looking spectacle. uh, Robert Zemeckis, I think, I understand why he would be drawn to this project. This is a type of technology he has liked working in the past with films like A Christmas Carol and the Polar Express film from the early 2000s. So I understand why he was drawn to a story like this. Uh, Tom Hanks, as an actor, he worked with Zemeckis for Forrest Gump. He said that he was excited to get the opportunity to work with Zemeckis again, uh, which, by the way, he also did. He was the director for Castaway as well. But Tom Hanks expressed that he was very excited to work with him. I totally understand why. Uh, they seem to have a great respect, and I think Zemeckis can bring out something really special in Tom Hanks. And as a performance director, I think Zemeckis still has it. It's the issues is the visuals become so lost within the film. This film struggles to keep your interest as it just becomes visually obtuse. It's not that even the visuals look bad. It's just that there's so many of them. Specifically, when we get to Pleasure Island, it's just a lot for your eyes to look at, and you kind of just glaze over. That's how I found myself watching the film. I was fairly invested in the film. Then there's a little bit more CGI, and then there's just an abundance of it. And it's not, again, that it ever looks necessarily bad. I wouldn't call the CGI necessarily horrendous or even use the word bad to describe the CGI. It's just overabundant. It is so much of it within this film, and so much that your eyes just don't know what to do and how to handle it. So that becomes a mess, along with the animal characters. Again, it's this weird thing where they kind of overcorrected with the criticism of The Lion King. You can't have real looking animals because then they can't emote well. These are definitely much more cartoonish than the Lion King counterparts. The issue is that they all look too rubbery and plastic. It's that issue with you can't capture cartoonish features in live action, but also it's this weird no man's land where you can't please anybody. Something like like a wolf looking fake in a cartoon, that's fine because everything has cartoonish characteristics to it. And then in live action, uh, when you see something look cartoonish, it now just stands in juxtaposition to the rest of the world that's trying to build. So you get this weird no man's land, because then you can't go the realistic route because, again, like Lion King proved, animals can't emote particularly well. So you're left in this middle zone where, yes, you have to make it cartoony, and yes, you also can't make it completely unrealistic. And it's a really hard design for an animator to pull off. And in this film, none of them particularly work well. There's a CGI cat in the film that is just horrendous. Why not just use a real cat? It's the issue of, if you have it available, just do it. I don't know why you didn't just decide to use a cat. But it's those little details that make the world fall apart. You look at this film, and I think if you would take a shot from this film, like this shot, for instance, that shot looks fine on its own, not in motion. The exact second, though, you put the shot in motion and connected with everything else, it falls apart because the realism is broken. I'm not saying that a film can't have cartoonish qualities to it, but you are establishing that the only difference between the cartoon and the live action is this rarity of getting to see this live action adaptation of a much beloved classic. If you wanted to just go cartoony, then you have the original cartoon, but then you can't go fully live action. As I already mentioned, you're left in this just no-win situation, the Kobayashi Maru. And that's ultimately what Pinocchio is. It just struggles because Disney doesn't know what they want to do with these live actions. One other issue that I will mention with the film is that, just straight up, Joseph Gordon-Levitt as Jiminy Cricket is just a bad voice actor in this movie. So often Hollywood will just hire a famous actor to be a voice actor. They don't necessarily have the characteristics that make them a great voice actor. That's the issue with Joseph Gordon-Levitt. He just kind of sounds like Joseph Gordon-Levitt, talking like Joseph Gordon-Levitt. He's not doing anything particularly interesting with his voice. He is just who he is, and it doesn't make for a particularly interesting or fun Joseph Gordon-Levitt performance as Jiminy Cricket. Besides that, like I said, I think Tom Hanks is the reason you watch this movie. I think the first 30 minutes of this film are actually pretty special. I think it really captured an emotional core, and I wish they spent more time on it, because when the film comes back to that emotional core at the end, I think it works. But the issue is from basically the start of the second half to the very last 10 minutes of the film, it's all just kind of gobbledygook. I can't make sense of it. There's nothing particularly special with it. I've seen it before, and yet there's something uncanny about it. It never completely clicks. Again, not a bad film, though. For the most part, I just found myself indifferent while watching this film. I wasn't particularly annoyed. I wasn't offended like The Lion King offended me. The issue is the film gets lost in its own nostalgia. And that's my review of Pinocchio. On a scale of 4 stars, I'm giving this 2 stars. It is not a bad film. I would quantify this as fine to negative review. It is not particularly good, but I also didn't find this offensive. I found myself just completely indifferent to this film while having a handful of fun while watching this movie. It was nowhere near as bad as I thought it was going to be. I think The Lion King is a much worse film than this. If this film was on again, I wouldn't be particularly opposed to watching it, especially if I'm doing other stuff in the background. It is just a film that exists. Pinocchio exists. And that's the best thing I can say about this movie. With that said, guys, make sure, if you like this video, to like and subscribe to the channel. I'm trying to go for 100 subscribers by the end of September. Thank you for all the support. Thank you for the support to our most recent video where I launched the series Oscar Power Rankings, where I'm going through each category and breaking down the power rankings as we get closer to award season. So if you like Oscars, make sure to check out that video. Again, my name is Ben Friedman here from the Beniverse. Thank you for watching. Take care. Bye-bye.